So mini tubs are now done. Now it's for the leaf spring relocation, which is the second part of the kit. Let's get to it. What's going on, guys? Matt over here, Lethal Garage, and we are back at Craig's. We got Heath here. If you guys don't know him on Instagram, the Nova 1964, is that right? Yes. I got it right. So Heath's already getting some templates laid out. Cars up on the lift make it a little bit easier to do. We could do it on the ground, but man, having a lift up here makes it so much better. And you can see we're taping templates, and when I say we're, I mean Heath is taping templates to the rear frame rail. And in this instance, it's getting ready to make our marks for the cutout. So this portion here basically is getting cut out. Detroit Speed provides you a new metal piece that gets welded in place, but they give you these awesome templates that allow you to make your marks so you know where to put your lines and all that greatness. So we'll go into more detail when we start marking up the lines, but this is where we're at right now, and the goal is to get the whole leaf spring relocation kit complete. And I believe this is the only welding, correct, that's going to be taking place?
Yep.
So it's pretty straightforward, and you got a lot of room to maneuver. So let's get to it. Okay, guys, we have all the templates lined up. We have the leaf spring pocket mount template. We have the inboard or outboard leaf spring and the inboard frame rail, or I guess this would be the outboard frame rail for the leaf spring. And then the inboard, and then this is the underside of the pocket mount coming across. So you can see they have dark highlighted lines. We put red on there so we knew where to cut or where to make our marks. And while they were lining up the templates on the other side, I just took a, I don't even know what that was, a flap wheel? What is the name of that sander? They call those flap wheels?
Yeah, just a grinder wheel.
Grinder wheel? Grinder, flap, whatever. Just started cleaning a lot of this up because one, welded surfaces, two, got to clean up in there anyways. Media Blaster will get the rest that I didn't, and just getting it prepped. So let's start cutting. So you can kind of see we colored in red the areas that are getting cut out. So got it all lined up, kind of colored, so we have a good idea. We had a center punch where there is a new hole being added on the template. You'll want to center punch that so you know where that goes. But outside of that, she's ready to cut. So we'll get the other side taped up and this side get cutting. Well, that looks good. As you guys could see, we cut out the main frame rail, but in the instruction it highlights to cut into the bottom of the floorboard. So that way we can get the new piece that they provide to sit in flush. Now, we made a line on how far over we need to go, but we're cutting just on the inside. So that way we can make it perfect and have enough meat to weld on into the new bracket. So you can kind of see how the piece is going to fit in there. We're just going to keep working away until we get that to sit flush and make sure we have enough meat on the inside so it sits flush on the bottom side and the top side. Yeah, see, now it's not rocking.
I'll put that other template back on there. I think we're gonna have to cut this over more.
How far up? Oh, let's go up a little bit, huh? So we've got this all kind of cut in. We're still working on it, but the way that we got the spring perch up in position. Now, the one thing that we couldn't do that the instructions outline was cut from the upper side of the car because of where they welded in my old roll cage brackets. So we kind of did it from the bottom and it's working out pretty good. Basically, we just held up this bracket, lined it up in position, and made our marks here on the back side and trimmed into the floorboard. And so that way we have this up and going, and we're just kind of just trimming here, getting the fat off there, and getting it sit nice and flush. So overall, you can see we're getting really close for this sitting perfect up in the perch, and feeling really good about where we're at. And the biggest thing I think we should highlight here is just don't go cut crazy here. You want everything to fit as snug as possible because you are going to be welding all of this back in position. So this upper bracket and perch, they're going to get bolted to positions, but we're going to weld the inside of the vehicle where we cut so we have a clean, closed off environment there, and then we'll be seam sealing the heck out of it to make sure we don't get any leaking or issues down the road. Just inching away, 1/16 of an inch at a time, seeing where it hit, seeing where it touched, trying to get the best fit possible. You can see we got the spring perch in position. It's bolted in, we got it nice and in. You can see where we took a few chunks of meat off, a little more than we should, but it's just more about the learning experience and just taking a little at a time, measuring it up. We got it bolted in position, so we feel really good about how that's gonna sit. We can weld up the rest. And now, just slowly trimming away at this frame rail.
I gotta go much more.
And then we'll address the inside seat tub and whatnot once we get this lined up and figured out. We don't care about the inside, that could be touched up and bent back in position. So we got everything lined up on the car. You could see the apex is a little bit different on our rear frame versus the actual template. So we're gonna use a sander, just get it down exactly to the right curvature so we get a nice flush fit. So we have everything mocked up in a really good spot. We're gonna tack this bad boy in. Obviously the perch is bolted in place for now. We'll tack and weld that in as well. It's looking good. We took the factory mounting bracket for the leaf spring and bolted it in position. We did notice it was about 1 degree off kilter slightly. So we put a washer in here. We're gonna take a closer look at it. We also believe this bolt is a little worn down. So I went ahead and ordered a brand new bolt. I got all new bolts for in here and actually a new bracket as well. But everything is in position, intact. It really just need to weld it in. We ran out of 25 wire, so we're kind of at a standstill currently, but looking pretty good on this side. It's really just rinse and repeat on the other side, getting the template in place. So we're gonna do that off camera because it's the same process as this side, and then we'll come back after this is all welded in, show you what that looks like, and then we'll go ahead and hang the leaf springs, get the axle in place, and show you how to get the shock towers in place. Let's do it. So we mocked it up with the leaf spring in place, mainly to verify clearance, and we got plenty of clearance here between the shackle. We won't know for sure until we put some weight on it, and we'll do that once we have the axle in place. But it's looking pretty good. I have to find out from Detroit Speed. The directions don't necessarily state which way the front shackle connects or which is left and right, so I want to find that out. I don't know if there's an easy way to find out.
I would say it goes like that.
But it looks like it goes like this. Based on the initial image, it looked like this was on the outside. So I'll verify with Detroit Speed, and if it's different than what we're showing you here, I'll comment in the description below. But if it's right, I won't say nothing. Okay guys, we are back. It's been a few days. It's a rainy day out on a metal roof, so I apologize if it's really loud. Hopefully my voice is coming through. But as I left over the last, what, 4 or 5 days, Heath and his all amazingness and Craig, oh, I don't know, how much of this was Heath and how much of it was you and how much was Craig? 50-50. Was it? Yeah. Okay, he's gonna go 50-50 on it. So These were tacked in the last time we left off. Now they're welded in. It's grinded down, primered in. Look really good. So passenger side and the driver's side. So we got these all buttoned up. We got the main piece back in, welded in. Everything's good to go. So at this point, we need to get the shock tower in place, and there's a few things we got to do, and I apologize, I have a lot of lights because it's dark and rainy out, but we have to get the new bushings in to the rear subframe. So these bushings are going to hang the hangers that are going to offset the spring to get it as inboard as possible. Now, I actually have this backwards set up for purpose of this illustration, but the fat one goes in on the inside because the idea is to push the spring all the way as far inside as possible. So this small one that I have shown up in this mock-up is actually supposed to go on this side, but we'll flip that around and show you how to get this in. They recommend using a bolt. I mean, if you don't have a pneumatic press or clamp, I mean, the best way to do this is a bolt and washer method. You can use the plastic washers if you're worried about scuffing up, but we're getting these in ahead of our media blasting, and I'm never gonna see them, so I'm not too worried about it. And there you have it. New bushings in place. Now we have the setup for the rear hanger, because I want to get this in place. So you have one long bolt provided. You have two of their composite bushings, and then inside the bushings that we just put in, the billet aluminum ones, there's a plastic sleeve and the metal sleeve that goes inside of it. So we're going to assemble this and put it in and hang them. Now the ultimate goal again is making sure everything allows it to offset as far as possible to the inboard side, so that way the springs have as much clearance as possible. You're not going to be mounting them like that unless you're on the driver's side. So this is the passenger side, and I tape these up in hopes so they won't get messed up. Obviously these pieces will be coming back off before media blasting, but we need to mock it up, so taped them up, gonna put them in place. We have everything mocked up now. We have these all pulled tight so there's no gaps. This is we just put this finger tight so we can drop the spring as needed. So now that we have the hanger in place for the rear, we gotta look at the fronts. Now these are the original ones from the car. I could have these media blasted and powder coated and be good to go, but I decided, nope, let's buy new ones. So I got some new ones. The downside of them being aftermarket is there's a little metal tab on them. We had to trim it down, as you can see, because it was making the holes not line up by almost 1/4 of an inch. So we made that adjustment, and now we can get this in on the new leaf spring and be good to go. There we go. Got the new bolt and the new plate in place. Now we can lift the leaf spring up and put the 3 bolts in on the plate. Oh, it's a yeehaw. You ready for this, Heath?
Yeah.
He's got his glasses on and everything. So we got the springs and everything hanging. Now we gotta get to a point where we can get the shock towers in and the axle all set up. Now, as you can see, I have my 8.5 inch 10 bolt, and we gotta cut off the factory perches because we have the new setup from Detroit Speed over here. So basically we're gonna cut off factory perches, we're gonna smooth it out, make it all look pretty, and then we'll be ready to start getting the Detroit Speed stuff on, and we can get it on the car, line it all up, and then we can tighten it up, and then we can get our shock tower placement. Yeah, I've never done this before. Yeah. I guess at this point, I don't want to necessarily say this is a guide, but this is more of a, this is how we're doing it, and we'll see how it pans out. Just when I said it was getting cold out here. Looks like Heath is cutting on the inside of the factory weld, and then we can grind and sand it down to be nice and smooth. So at first glance, it looks like we got it really, really hot, but it wasn't too bad. We got them both off. You can see it's rough. We got to do some disc cutting and sanding and whatnot, but it'll clean up nice. And keep in mind, I'm going to be, when they come and media blast the car, I'm having media blast this whole rear end, and we've decided to do it like hot rod, that satin black that you can literally buy anywhere. Because if I powder coat it, it's just gonna get messed up. And I know what we're gonna be doing with this car, and I figured make it super easy to touch up, because if it's powder coated and it scratches or chips, it's never gonna look right. So yeah. So hot rod black it is. Rattle can. Good job, Heath. You missed a spot. Pad's cut off, sanded down, flat pad, cutter, stone. I'm not very good at this, but thanks to some guidance from Heath and Russ, I didn't completely fail. Could it have been better? Sure. But hey, learning, right? So Heath is taking a gander at how all this stuff is gonna sit together. We're gonna be getting the mounts up on the axle loosely so we can get that up in position. We'll probably drop the car for that and go from there. So let us figure out exactly what we're doing and we'll be back. Okay guys, now it's the fun part. We got the axle in place. We got the main mount in place. We just got them loosely tightened, and as the instructions highlight, we're tightening them side to side. After we have basically centered the entire setup on the vehicle. So we measured from the shackle to the dust plate on this side, shackle, dust plate on that side, and verified the distance, making sure that the main hub on the axle wasn't different sizes. So it's 10 and a half inches here to here. Your car may be slightly different, but that's the measurements we got to get this centered up on this vehicle. And again, we're just tightening these slowly, side to side to side to side, until we get it nice and tight on there, and then we'll torque it down as outlined in the instructions. So it's all tightened up and in place. We also have it degreed at, you know, the booklet says between 3 and 4 degrees. We have it at 3.2, 3.1 currently. So now we're ready to start looking at shock tower stuff. So what are you working on, Heath?
Lowering this car so I can reach it.
Yes.
We're finding a step stool.
I gotta figure out the level of my face cam.
I would rather lower the car than watch you bump your head all day.
Yeah, is that what you're going for? So we got it all centered. We're putting the shackles on now just to get this clamp. We realized when we tightened these up, it put the pumpkin at a degree, so we got to adjust that. So we'll loosen these a little bit and get that re-degreed. But we're gonna get the shackles on now just to hold it in position for the most part. So that way, I don't know for that way. I don't even know why I said that. But you can see this side. So again, after we tighten that all down, we remeasured. Now the one thing to highlight, at least that we noticed, is these top brackets have a lot of play in them. So don't measure from these brackets. We measured from the bottom bracket on both sides, from the dust cover to the bracket, from the bracket to the main connection point here. Same on this side. We found the car is perfectly lined up right now. We just got to degree it down a bit. So where's my hand? We got to just degree it down 1 more degree. We'll get there. So to highlight, it kind of feels like it's backwards, but the R part number is going to be on the driver's side. You'll notice the rear facing area for where the shock mounts. This is how it is on the earlier models. The L bracket will come over here, and again, shock mount facing out the back. Okay, so one thing we didn't necessarily do early on was get the measurement on where these brackets sit. So if you look at the rear shackle here, Detroit Speeds highlighting measured 28 inches from the center of this bolt onto the frame rail, and that's the center line for this bar. And as you can see, it lines up pretty nicely. Now in that, we just use some tapper screws into the weld marks. They give you some pre-holes and stuff so you can get a nice weld around this whole thing. So we can get it all in position and get a shock up in position, make sure it all clears. So you can see the bottom side here is mounted up. We don't have everything tight. We left this wrap to protect it because it's a really nice looking shock. But all that said, we made sure there's enough clearance to get a tool onto this nut. Obviously this can be shifted down so you can have all the clearance you need, and also space for the fill port. So overall, I think this is looking really good. It lines up really nice, and we're ready to basically pull it all off. We're gonna have to make some marks though, so we know exactly where to tack it. Actually, we could tack it in place here, huh?
Correct.
So we're gonna tack it here, pull it off, and get solid welds on both sides. So obviously you're gonna have to measure side to side because this bar can go side to side. So you wanna make sure you have the same dimensions on both sides before you tack it up and pull it off and then do your finish welds. So yeah, that's where we're at. So we'll tack these up, bring it down, do some complete welding, put it back up, tack these in position, and then finish weld. And then we'll clean all this up and everything so the metal's nice and fresh for welding action, right? Yeah, that's where we're at. Good job, Heath.
Hey, thanks, man. Good job, you.
Our trio here, we're all bickering at each other like, no, go this way, that way. But I think we nailed it. I think we got it. So the instructions are pretty clear, but you know, we're always second guessing ourselves. Don't be us. Okay, so the bar is fully welded to the brackets, and now we got it back up in place. And now we're gonna weld the bracket to the frame rail. Now, as the instructions highlight, you weld the inner tabs and the streaks that they have for you, and then around the outside edge and sides that are touching the frame rail. Got all of the inner weld points that the brackets had. So you have the inside spots and the underneath all in place. Geez, Heath, we could start calling you a welder. So now, now we need to weld around these outside edges, tie it all in, same on that side. This is looking good. Shock tower in place. Is that really a tower? I mean, it's not connected yet without the shock. So we just call it like hover shock. Look, he's taking pictures of his work. He's proud. He's proud. Internet's going, I could do better. But I think that about wraps it up. So we have some finish welding to do. We'll show you guys later on once everything's set, everything wheels done, shocks installed, how it all looks. But as far as the fabrication and installation of all the parts, that is done. The one last thing to touch on is gonna be your seat back. So I have a really rusty, terrible seat. I'm probably gonna go down to a powder coater, see if they can media blast and salvage this. But there is gonna be some modifications needed for the seat back. So in that, this sits up in the back seat like so, and you're gonna have to be trimming it up so that way it sits nice and flush back in the car. I don't really have a guide for that, nor do I know how we're gonna attempt to do that yet, but do know that this is a process that you'll have to overcome on this install. If you have a car that's already upholstered and everything, I just did my rear seat resto video. If you guys saw that, you have to be really careful pulling out all the hog rings. It's not fun whatsoever. But that basically concludes the Detroit Speed mini tubs. At least all the manufacturing and the installation of all the hard parts. The rest is just fine finish trim. The inner wheel, the inner panels, the plastic panels also have to be extended. We don't even have those yet to be able to extend them at this point. So we'll have to tackle that down the road. Keep in mind, that's another thing that you'll have to tackle. We could put big fat tires on the backside of this car and it's gonna look good. So if you guys are interested in more stuff around the Lethal Classic, subscribe to the channel. Lots more content coming, but as far as the Detroit Speed stuff, we're all in for the rear and the mini tubs. The next videos are gonna be for the front subframe with the coilovers and all that goodness. So stay tuned for all that because it's coming. So the last thing I didn't highlight is around the rear axle. So this perch here and the upper perch, these need to be welded to the axle before you drive the vehicle. Now, you can't do that, you can't tack it, you can't do anything until you get weight in the vehicle and it's on the ground. As you can tell, we're pretty far away from that right now, so I can't show that in this video. But do know that these will get welded to the axle, so it's permanent and everything. You want to make sure your axle's degreed and everything's set up and you have weight in the car and everything's verified before that happens. So I did want to highlight that, as it's pretty dang important. And the other portion is, if you remember early on in the first video, we marked where the rear seat belts go. That's also one thing that still needs to be done. Now in this instance, we're not quite ready to do that yet, but you do have to put in the tabs. They do provide them. They go right into the floorboard, you weld them in, you're good to go. Follow the instructions, they do highlight that in the manual. But until next time, guys, see you on the road.